Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Today we've got Bill Armour on today. He spent 4 years studying the Bible, has a degree in biblical studies, 8 years in the Army and military intelligence. Then he realized that the dollar was in trouble, wanted to get into something that would help people to be more stable. So he got into precious metals, been doing that 6 years. But most important, he's a prophecy student. He likes the Prophecy Club. Listen to the Prophecy Club. Okay, so Bill, welcome to the Prophecy Club.
Thanks so much, Stan. I really appreciate being here. Big fan of everything you do and appreciate all the hard work you put in.
Excellent. Okay, so what is going on in the world of gold and silver?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the biggest news today is, and I'll do a little bit of backtracking here to give some context on where we find ourselves. People may remember back in February when President Trump announced that we were going to audit Fort Knox. Yes. Had a lot of play in the media, and people were very excited about it for good reason, too. It's been far too long since we've had an audit done. Who knows what's in there? And fast forward to today, and people find themselves looking around saying, we really haven't heard a peep. And it is official. The bill that was proposed is HR 3795, the Gold Reserve Transparency Act of 2025, is officially dead. It has died. And the big questions that arise around this are A, why do we need a bill in the first place? And B, how is it that we still can't get this thing passed?
Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious explanation is that the deep state still has claws. I think, maybe people were overly optimistic when they came in, thinking that, Trump would come and immediately, uproot everything. And don't get me wrong, he's done a phenomenal job. I think what we're doing with ICE and starting to move out some of these liberal operators, I think is very important. But this is not a quick and easy job. This will take time. And the fact that we still can't get this audit done means that we're still completely in the dark, really, about our entire country's financial future.
Right. It tells me that Trump is not as much in charge as he wants to be. And it tells me that the evil cabal is still really in charge of our money. Now,
absolutely,
what do you see happening in the world of gold and silver?
Well, I think that there's a couple avenues here, and we'll talk about both of them in due order here. The first is what comes next. I think that this is evidence that, as we just spoke to there, that the deep state does still have claws. And with that said, we know that this is not their death knell, that the worst is still in front of us, if I can say that bluntly. And so they will use whatever means they have access to. It seems like one of the greatest means by virtue of this not being passed, is that they still have tremendous power in the financial sector. That's through the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor a reserve.
Right.
We can talk about that. But to get to the point is that they still have the ability to really control our money. That's what the Federal Reserve does. And the Federal Reserve is completely in bed with these same deep state actors. So when we talk about this, it's important to remember that what we see on our coming in our bank accounts and retirement accounts, and this and that is a number, and it exists in a computer. But that system, that entire financial system, is still largely controlled by the black hats in this way. So all that to say, I don't think they're going out without a fight. If that means they have to institute financial chaos, we've seen organized rioting. I know that, I don't know if you watched back with the riots that happened in Los Angeles not too long ago. They were passing out gas masks there. These were fresh out of the box. They had a pickup truck, a brand new pickup truck that pulled up, and they were passing out gas masks. So make no mistakes about this. This is an organized effort that is occurring, and we have to understand that there will be something to come. And so when I look at precious metals, that was actually my impetus for getting into precious metals in the first time was the response to COVID. The hoax that was driven up there and the way that the government handled that, it became very apparent to me that the number that I see in my bank account, whether you're the truckers in Canada or whether you're just, Joe Blow living, in Iowa, that your money is not your money so long as these powers have access to it.
Whereas when you have gold or silver in your possession, or if you have it stored close by in a reliable place, it's your money.
You got it.
In Fort Knox.
You got it. You're exactly right. And I think with the Fort Knox piece, it's just interesting to look that this has been going on for a long time. I know Rand Paul tried to make it out there multiple times. The very first, he went on for years and years trying to get an audit done. Finally, they agreed to it. This was maybe 15 years ago. And he showed up, and then they told him that it was a holiday, a new holiday, and he had to go home, or it was a power outage. I can't remember the specifics of the bogus answer that they gave him, but they turned him away. And then, of course, he never got in. So when you look at what that means, because a lot of people say, well, what happens if the gold isn't in Fort Knox? Why is that important to me? Well, we base our currency, or rather other countries, the currency fiat is based on the good faith and trust of the United States government. Now, of course, we're not gold backed. Nixon took us off the gold standard, but other countries understand that we still have some collateral to cover that debt, or they think we do. And we've been operating under that, I would say, lie for a very long time with other countries. If it comes out that that gold is not, in fact, in Fort Knox and it has been absconded with, then all of a sudden the confidence across the world that we can deliver on these debt payments, that's what it is, it's our national debt there, that $37 trillion number that we see the clock keep going up and up and up. That number, if they realize we can't pay that debt, you get a run on the banks, except instead of run on the banks, it's a run on the United States currency. People will begin to sell or offload all of their dollars. They'll trade it for yuan. They'll trade it for really any other currency than the dollar, because they don't want that, because they realize it's a sinking ship. And what will happen then? Well, your dollar will drop dramatically. We saw with the Weimar Republic back in Germany, when they had a currency crisis, it was 160 marks would get you a loaf of bread, 160 marks. It was 1922. By 1923, a loaf of bread was 20 billion marks. So if you had, 100,000 marks and you thought you were doing pretty good in your bank account there, and you woke up a year later, well, guess what? You can't even afford a slice of bread, much less a loaf.
I heard the story like this, that in those days it took a wheelbarrow full of marks to get a loaf of bread. And if you rolled up with the wheelbarrow, they would throw the marks away and steal the wheelbarrow. It was more valuable.
You're exactly right.
Let's say that all of a sudden these good plans that Trump has to clean out the massive arrest, to get rid of the immigration, the illegal immigrants, to clean up, but all of his plans go awry, and all of a sudden things fall apart, and the people that do have gold and silver want to trade it in. Just how easy is it to trade it in? How would they go about doing that?
That's a great question. So I always use the example of Venezuela to speak to this topic. And the reason I use that is because it's the most recent example we have. So there's really two things I want to mention. One is the timeline. This kind of stuff, even in Germany, didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like the currency went to zero in one day. It did happen day by day by day, and it was dramatic day over day, but it was day over day. So that's one thing. And the other thing, of course, is that systems of this bartering developed very quickly. So in Venezuela, it was about 2 weeks after the currency had completely collapsed there. You saw many of the pictures of them passing out toilet paper and the soup lines and all of that. People couldn't get the necessities. The people that had gold and silver, within 2 weeks, a market had already developed where people were smuggling in just normal everyday goods and services that they needed, that they had to live off of. They were smuggling those into the country, and they were trading them for the people, for the gold and silver that people had. That's food, water, blankets, ammunition, even all sorts of things. And then they would take that back to their country and sell that. So that whole system, people always say, well, how will they know how much an ounce of silver, an ounce of gold? And I say necessity is the mother of invention in this. And people will learn very, very quickly, because they will have to. Because if your options are wheeling a wheelbarrow and having the wheelbarrow stolen, or taking an ounce of silver to go get your bread, I think you know what people will choose.
Okay, so can they go down to the local pawn shop, or can they send this into you? How do they actually trade it in?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they want to trade it in, let's say, because it depends on the timeline and where we're at. If things have completely collapsed, you're probably bartering, if I can be honest there. And you're walking to that is the person that has the milk, the eggs, the this and that. If we are in the process of that and things have not gotten quite that bad, but the dollar is collapsing, it's really simple. Gold and silver is bought and sold every single day. So if you're working with Genesis Gold, you're working with someone like myself, you would just reach out, say, hey, Bill, I need to convert this into, some amount of whatever currency we're using at the time. Maybe it's the dollar, maybe it's something else in the future. And I need to convert that into currency. They would just reach out directly to myself. We would institute, they would either send that to us and we would have that picked up, or perhaps if that's in an IRA or 401k, something like that, if that's stored at a depository, any of those options, then of course the metals are sent from the depository and we issue the funds right back to them. So it's a very simple process.
But you have a special, I don't know, a code or something, a special way to transport it going to or returning to you that's secure. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So we take security very strongly. Of course, any metals that are coming from us are going to be insured entirely by us. So there's no risk to you guys, to the viewers, to anyone that purchases metals from us. But more importantly, the way that we do that, and I can't get into all of the specifics because I can't give away the trade secrets that are keeping metals safe. But I will say that I always tell this story that I had a client one time, and I called to make sure that their metals were delivered. And they called and they said, I haven't gotten the metals yet, because we had just seen that they had been delivered. No, I haven't gotten the metals yet, but I think someone ordered a bunch of tile on my behalf because we didn't order this. And I said, did you open the box? And they said, no, we haven't opened it yet. And sure enough, it was their metals. But just to go on, that we never make it so obvious as to say, a Brinks truck pulling up to a home or anything like that. It's going to be incredibly discreet.
Gold is in this box.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I always say it's a pretty good sign that if the person who ordered the metals was surprised by it, that's got to steer away most other people.
Okay, so if they want to get some gold or silver, how do they go about that?
Right. So the big thing to keep in mind is there's two ways to do that. You've got post-tax funds. That's things you've got in a bank account, brokerage, things of that nature. And then you've got the 401k IRAs. If it's inside of a brokerage or a checking account, savings account, it's as simple as a wire transfer, and then we issue the metals. We send the metals directly to you. That can be to your doorstep. That can be
check where it's scanned in and just emailed to you.
Say again.
Can you take a check where it is written out at the person's home, scanned, and then just emailed to you?
So we don't, and the reason for that is security purposes. We don't want anyone, that check to be out there for someone else to get. The wire transfer is going to be the most secure way to accomplish that, federally insured. So that's going to be the safest. And on the other side there, you've got retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, pre-tax funds. And that's going to be a qualified rollover. That is to say that those funds are moving. You're not paying taxes on that, no tax implications, no 1099s. And those funds are moving from one qualified account to another, to a position where you can actually secure them. So get physical precious metals. We help with that entire process. But having metals at a time like this is going to be very important, because when it does come that, we talk about Fort Knox here, if I can go back to that for just a moment. When it does come out, as I presume, many of your listeners, as I presume, the metals are not there. What's going to happen? Well, if you have an understood amount of supply and demand, everyone's taken an economics class or knows basic supply and demand. If we assume that the supply is a certain amount and suddenly there's $50 billion worth of gold that's missing there, what happens? Well, supply is much lower, but demand is the same. So the price goes up dramatically. So if that gold isn't there, we take a tremendous amount out of the supply, and we're going to see the price of gold skyrocket immeasurably.
So what would happen if Trump, in his black car, they call it the Beast, and all of these security people were to roll up to the gate of Fort Knox and say, I want to see the gold unannounced? What would happen?
I think we would really start to, we would really see a confrontation there. Now, it's tough to say. I mean, would they turn the president away himself? Probably not. He might get in there. The question then becomes, that audit is going to be an arduous process. They have to both get the records of what is in there.
Let him in.
I don't know. If he shows up with the National Guard and enough guns,
what does that do?
Yeah, I think we're talking about the same kind of things, that John F. Kennedy wrestled with, and look where he ended up. So, and that's not to say anything I shouldn't, but I am just making the point that the forces that we deal with here are very powerful and will do anything to stay in power. It's kind of like you put a dog on its last leg, on its hind leg, it might bite. And we're going to see that very soon. And that's part of the reason that I'm so adamant about people doing this sooner rather than later, is that I really do believe we are in the 11th hour. I think that that Trump is doing really great things, but that last hour, there's an old saying, never underestimate your opponent. And if you don't think that they would be willing to drag the entire financial system to the ground to keep themselves in power, then I think there's a lot to be learned.
So the stock market starts crashing, and a person is then deciding that they want to quickly get some gold and silver. Just how quickly can they get it?
Yeah, well, if they do it now, we're talking about a couple weeks here. If it's pre-tax funds, post-tax funds, within a week. But if you're talking about once the market starts crashing, think of it kind of like an auditorium that catches on fire. There's only one entrance and exit in that auditorium. Suddenly people are climbing over themselves. It's really tough to funnel that many people out. 2008, you saw people couldn't get their money out of the market. They couldn't get their money put into precious metals before they were down 40, 50%. So if the idea is I'm going to wait until things start dropping a little bit to do something, you're already going to be too late. There's no bell at the top there that warns you that, hey, this is the last chance. When that time comes, it's really a Noah's Ark moment of once those Ark doors came up.
I'm going to go through, and like I did in a broadcast a couple of days ago, and I said, so if you and I were to go to breakfast or lunch and sit down, if you were to turn to me and say, Stan, the prophecy man, okay, what do you see coming? Now, as I go through this, if there's something that triggers and ties to gold and silver, let me know if you have a comment. You want to say something, okay? Here's what I see. I think that probably, and perhaps, now this is not thus saith the Lord, God has not told me anything. This is just my best guess based upon everything I know. I think is probably in early September, but no later than early October, we're going to see a financial change. And it's probably going to, the prophecies say it happens immediately overnight. One guy was sitting in a restaurant in this dream, and they came in and basically said, everyone stand up and walk out. We're closing, and we don't expect to reopen again. Others have seen it happening where they are fighting in the streets to get into the grocery stores, fighting in the grocery stores to get the products. I think that we're looking at a financial change. I think we're also looking at a constitutional change where the Constitution is somehow, and I don't exactly know how this happens, is set aside. Trump is then made president of the new Republic of the United States. That's the new name of it. And then they will start with massive arrests. I think that the Washington, D.C., with the National Guard there is just the beginning. We're going to see it in, he's even said it in 9 different cities he's talking about going to. And of course, Chicago right now is standing with saying, we don't need you, we don't want you. And Trump says, look, I can do what I want to do. I'm president of the United States. And if it gets bad enough, I'll send in the National Guard and you can deal with them. In all of that, and I see the massive arrests based upon several things, probably starting in September. A lot of this is going to start in September. And I don't want to see people hurt. So if they have an IRA, a 401k, a big pile of money in the bank, big pile of money under the mattress, I'm not giving financial advice. Can't do that, okay? Our government tells us everything we can't do. But I think it is wise for them to call you and say, okay, here's my situation. What do you think? Your comments.
Yeah, amen. And I would agree with that entirely. I mean, the first thing we can do is discuss the situation people were in. But to go back to the mass arrests, I think that Trump deploying the National Guard in Washington, and then obviously the places that will go elsewhere, is exactly what you're describing. It's preparation for the mass arrests that will occur. I mean, I personally think that the traitors Hillary, I think Obama, I think people like that, there will be justice served. But beyond that, there will be, I mean, organized riots to combat that. They're not going to go quietly, and I think that we will see markets react accordingly. I mean, this will be the closest thing to a civil war since the Civil War. And so in that time here, you're going to see, and probably for a good while there, huge changes to the financial system, to our constitutional republic, which I want to add. I mean, you look at the way that our country is run for a long time, it has been run by the bankers, by that banking cartel. Legislation is pushed by these people who buy politicians. So again, this is a fundamental overhaul of the entire system. And if you are in the market, that is effectively, and dollar denominated assets, et cetera, these are the things that they currently control. And so, when push comes to shove, you need to decide, really anyone needs to decide and have a fundamental understanding of which side of this I would call it a spiritual battle. It's going to be obviously physical as well, but do you want to be on? Because they are using, a lot of people don't know this, they're using your money to fund and push a lot of their agendas. They leverage off of that. And so people say, how do they get all this money? People need to wake up, because it's your money that's accomplishing these things. For most people, they just leave it in a 401k and say, Joe, my broker's got it handled. Joe may not know. Joe probably has no idea, your broker, that he's supporting these things, but his higher ups certainly do. So call. You can ask for me personally. I mean, I believe that this is, again, the 11th hour. And so I'm more than happy. I work early mornings, late nights. Me and my wife are expecting our next week, but I will be, in the office almost every day, minus delivery, because I really don't think we have much time left.
Okay, well, we have not talked about the prepper bar. Tell them about the prepper bar, and I think you have something you want to say about a book.
Absolutely. So prepper bars, this is going to be one of the lifelines for people, if it does get to that bartering situation. And I should say when, maybe that's in our lifetime, or maybe that's, for kids, grandkids, etc. But they are, he's got one right there. So they are silver and gold. They come in silver and gold, and they can be broken into 3 separate size denominations, which allow for really great ease of bartering. Because right now, obviously, gold, you're not buying a bakery, so you're going to need a fractional there. But even silver, when we see silver go to $80, $90, $100 with this massive shift into metals, suddenly you're not going to want to give people a 1 ounce, $100 bill effectively for that bread. You're going to want a piece of that. So having access to smaller, tangible pieces is going to be really important. And so Genesis, proudly, we do offer those. We believe in those very much so, because that's going to be important.
So that's what it looks like. This is one side. This is actually 5 of those bars, about the size of credit cards. And then this is the other side. And you can get it in gold or silver. Now, the advantage to silver, in my opinion, is you can use this to buy a loaf of bread. But having one of these in gold, in my opinion, would be better, because you can break off a chunk of this, and a small chunk will get you all the gasoline you want. And it'll probably, a bigger chunk will perhaps get you a week's stay in a hotel. I mean, each one of these silver bars is worth how much, Bill?
So about 180.
Okay, in silver?
Mm-hmm.
What's the value in silver? It's about $50, isn't it?
Right.
Okay, so probably we're talking $3,500 for each one of these if they're gold. So there you go. Back to you, Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. So the prepper bars are going to be an instrumental part in anyone protecting themselves, being able to provide for their family when things really do get bad, and they will get bad. And I want to emphasize that one more time, is this is something that through my experience here studying the Bible, which I am, an avid, I read my Bible every single day. I focus a lot more on the latter chapters there, particularly Revelations, because I think that we are at that point. And this is something here, this is my vocational ministry. I've done vocational ministry before. I worked in the church as an associate pastor, but now as I stand here, I help people ferry them across this financial journey, because there is coming a time, and it is coming very soon, when the doors to the ark will close and people will not have this opportunity. So with all of the emphasis I can give people, I cannot stress that this is something not to wait on, because once that door closes, you will be stuck on the outside looking in, and there will be a lot of weeping, a lot of sadness, a lot of tears, and a lot of regret. And you want to have a lot of money when things go sideways, but you have a lot of regret. So when I talk to people about doing this, and a lot of them will sometimes give me, I'm just not sure if I'm quite ready. With as lovingly as I can say this, and I would say this to all of my Christian brothers and sisters out there, you better get ready, because the kingdom is coming. But before it gets there, we're going to see these tribulations. So people really need to be prepared. And if you haven't read Revelations, if you haven't been a studier, you need to listen to a lot more askstan and read your Bible.
So Revelation says that no man can buy or sell save he had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. That can only be accomplished with a global digital financial exchange system, because the Antichrist has got to get between the buyer and the seller. That can only happen digitally. Now, why is that important? Because what was it, 3 or 4 weeks ago? The Genius Act passed. So, well, what that did was make cryptocurrencies in value 1-for-1 with the US dollar. In other words, it paved the way for a digital currency, a global digital currency. Now, I know I love Donald Trump too, okay, but ask yourself this. If the Genius Act has passed, how much longer is it going to be before we get a digital currency? My guess is any day now. Any day now. And then once we get the digital currency, how long is it going to be before it goes global? Well, even more positively, I'd say any month now, but definitely within a year. Once that gets going, then that's going to tell us that we don't have long before the mark of the beast is going to come out, and the Antichrist pops out and shows his face, sits on the Ark of the Covenant, and all of a sudden, what appears to be a long way down the road, way over the horizon, might not be. It might be at the end of the block. It might
You're
be.
exactly right. You're exactly right.
Be ringing our doorbells, my brothers and sisters. It might be just that close. So 800-200-GOLD, 800-200-GOLD, or prophecyclubgold.com, prophecyclubgold.com. Give them a call and say, hey, here's my situation. Am I okay? Maybe they'll say you're okay. But then maybe you'll talk to Bill.
You're exactly right, and I'm happy to have those conversations. Another thing to keep in mind, you might be looking at this saying, well, it won't really affect me. I'm getting up there in age, but look, you want to leave something behind. I mean, there will be people left behind, and I always think about who are those people in my life that, if I pass away tomorrow, who's getting my IRA, and what are they getting it in? Because if they're getting it in something they can only utilize the mark to transact in, well, then I've doomed them as well. That's useless to them if I really want to see them in the kingdom. So if they're not already.
Okay, Bill, 800-200-GOLD. Bill Armour, thank you for being on Prophecy Club. I'll have you back again.
Thanks so much. God bless.